So as Emily mentioned just a minute ago, I'm Nicole Speeney, and I'm currently a graduate student and dietetic intern in UAB's DEPC program. So what that stands for is Dietitian Education Graduate Certificate Program. I will graduate with my master's in nutrition sciences in December. And then after I graduate, I can finally sit to take the registered dietitian exam to get credentialed. So very excited about that. A little bit about me. I was born and raised right outside of Philly in Pennsylvania. And I actually moved down to North Carolina in 2020 after graduating from Colgate University, which was my graduation fell in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, which was a whole thing. I played softball my entire life. I was captain on the D1 softball team at Colgate, and then I graduated with my Bachelor of Arts degree in psychological sciences. A fun fact, I was on the pre-med track at Colgate, but then I switched to psych sophomore year. And I did end up just needing those pre-med track classes for prerequisites for this master's program. All I knew in college was really that I wanted to help people, probably athletes or something in the medical field, but psych was just the most interesting for me. So I made that switch sophomore year. And another fun fact, the last softball game I ever played before the COVID-19 pandemic ended my senior year was at UAB. So that's kind of a fun fact as well. In college, I navigated disordered eating, orthorexia, and body dysmorphia on my own, everything from obsessing over my macronutrients and the food scale to a very rigid exercise routine while balancing a D1 sport. And I remember one day very vividly, that was kind of like a turning point in my head where something clicked and I was like, wow, I think something is wrong. I think I actually need to change my ways a little bit. So I would run and go to the sauna on top of my softball practices, lifts, conditionings, just to burn more calories, which is crazy to think back on. But one morning I remember being in the sauna and feeling like I was going to literally like pass out or throw up. So I crawled my way into the bathroom and sat on the bathroom floor for like a solid 30 minutes before I was able to get up. And actually I had a practice I had to get to. So 30 minutes sitting on the ground in the bathroom, just myself, before I had to go to practice. And that was a turning point for me mentally, I think. I think in that moment, I was like, this is not how I should be living my life. I think something is wrong. So not proud of it, but I actually never reached out for help because I was just too afraid, and I had too much going on at the time, too much pride as well. So in order to heal my broken relationship with food and my body, I implemented the principles of intuitive eating, and that's when I started to watch as my life began to change for the better. So now I aspire to reach others who might be going through similar struggles as I did. I strive to help women who struggle with orthorexia, which we'll go over in the presentation, as well as restriction, to actually push back on diet culture, perfectionism, and black and white thinking around food and exercise through using intuitive eating. So that is a little bit about me. This is just a little bit more about my story before we really get into the bulk of the presentation. So like I said before, I've been an athlete my whole life. I've always been naturally just more muscular than skinny. I think I first became really aware of body image in like middle/high school, when girls would talk about having a thigh gap or a flat stomach, just talking about losing weight. That's when I started to really take notice of my own body. And then in high school and my first like year and a half of college, I would often body check in the mirror, and I always wished I was skinnier. However, I never actually had that unhealthy relationship with food yet, because I knew that I did have to fuel for my sport. So sophomore year in college, I broke my leg during a game, and that ended my season. So I had dealt with some pretty intense season-ending injuries before, but I went home that summer with like an extra fire in my belly, feeling very eager to rehab it back. So I started to do 2-a-days which usually included like a track workout, running workout in the morning, followed by 1 or 2 CrossFit workouts later in the day. And I began to count my macronutrients. So just like a very rigid, intense regimen that I was on that summer. I quickly began to lose weight. And even though that wasn't necessarily the goal, I soon became very obsessed with the food scale, the bathroom scale. And it kind of turned into this game for me. How hard could I push myself? How close could I get my daily macronutrient intake to my goal? How low could I get the number on the bathroom scale? How could I eat the cleanest? It was totally a control thing looking back on it, which is something that my perfectionist, overachieving brain loved. I weighed everything that I could. If I knew that we were eating out, like getting dinner out at a restaurant, I would look at the menu ahead of time. And I packed desserts and high protein items for vacations and gatherings, even if I had to make a spectacle of myself. And I waited to eat at exact meal times that I set for myself. I had to prepare all of my own meals because I was afraid to have other people prepare them for me. So just a lot of disordered thoughts and habits that were going on at that time. And unfortunately, the positive reinforcement that I was getting from my peers, from others, fueled that cycle even more. And before I knew it, I was starting to notice physical detrimental signs. Like I lost my menstrual period, some of my hair started to fall out, my mood started to kind of swing back and forth. I started to isolate myself from social gatherings, and my digestive system was really like a mess. So it was really just a debilitating time in my life. And so instead of, like I was saying before, instead of seeking help like I really should have, I decided to take it upon myself to heal my relationship with food on my own. And because of that, I never received clinical treatment, so I was never diagnosed. But I think if I was diagnosed, it would have been with orthorexia, which we'll get into. So this fast forward to now, in 2020, I launched a new Instagram account that centers around intuitive eating called Expedition Nutrition. And I did that with the intention that it would eventually turn into my own nutrition practice. So actually, in January of this year, I invested in my own nutrition coaching business where I aspire to reach others who might be going through similar struggles as I did. And I really strive to help those struggling with orthorexia and restriction to push back on diet culture through using intuitive eating. All right, so there are many eating disorders, but I'm most passionate about orthorexia, which I've mentioned a couple times already, since that's what I personally lived. And even though orthorexia is not officially in the DSM-5, which is this big book behind me, if you can see it, it would qualify as an eating disorder that falls under the ARFID category within eating disorders. So ARFID stands for Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. Orthorexia is basically just an obsession with eating healthy or clean. And usually individuals that end up with it don't have the intention or the goal to even lose weight. It often starts with someone who wants to change their lifestyle for the better, which is great. You know, eating healthfully and moving your body are not bad things. It's just that when they become obsessive and the thought patterns around food are altered, that the person begins to spiral into what is called orthorexia. And typically those with orthorexia are afraid of gaining weight. They restrict their intake to fit into their macros. They have food rules. They struggle with body dysmorphia or body image. They work out excessively, and they just feel super anxious when they are not the ones in control of their food. And if it progresses, it's possible that those with orthorexia will then slowly start to show physical, emotional signs, kind of like how I was describing earlier. And kind of the worst part about it is that, unfortunately, since orthorexic tendencies are so normalized in contemporary society, it's a very hard thing to spot. So a lot of people that are struggling with this often do so in silence. And then one kind of fun fact, an interesting fact, actually, a new study came out and it reported that up to 89% of nutrition and dietetic students have orthorexia, which is a crazy statistic. And then 18% of nutrition and dietetic students had an eating disorder at some point in their life. And that study also said that 100% of that demographic of students experience symptoms associated with disordered eating. So kind of some crazy statistics. It just shows how common and unnoticed disordered eating can go and how needed professionals are in this space. And I'm wondering, I'm going to go ahead and skip it because I'm not sure exactly how to fix that. But basically what it was, so it was a video just with these three friends talking at their lunch table. I think it was like in the conference room at work. And this guy is sitting down and he's just trying to eat his lunch in peace. And the two of his friends are like spewing all of this contradictory nutrition information at him because of what he's eating. And it's like a 2 or 3 minute video it's pretty funny. So I can try to link it in the chat when I'm done. But it's just, it just goes to show how much nutrition misinformation there is and just how confusing it can be to navigate this world when you're just trying to be the healthiest version of yourself and you can't even parse apart the information that's correct versus incorrect. So sorry about the video. I'm not sure why that didn't work, but I will do my best to link it at the end. All right, so why are we here today? Like I was saying before, navigating wellness in a world that praises toxic diet culture, overcomplicates everything, and spreads insane amounts of misinformation is really hard. I used to be that girl, as I was sharing before, who weighed everything that she ate. I precisely planned everything I ate. Mealtimes and grocery trips for me just used to be very stressful because I felt like everything had to be perfect. And soon all I was thinking about was food. So I'm here today to show you that nutrition does not have to be complicated. I want to help you move away from having a rigid weekly meal plan and towards more intuitive eating practices to make your life easier and more open to other things that you love just besides food. So my hope is that you will leave this webinar today feeling more in tune with your body and just better equipped to adopt a more simplified outlook on nutrition and your overall wellness. All right, so objectives of this presentation. So these are kind of things that we will touch on throughout. I really wanted to raise awareness of disordered eating red flags, kind of did that before, as well as introduce you to intuitive eating and show you that you can nourish your body while eating intuitively, despite many misconceptions about intuitive eating. In doing this, we will push back on diet culture, and I will show you how to become more in tune with your body while adopting a more simplified outlook on nutrition and wellness. And at the fun part, I will conclude by walking you through my Intuitive Eater's Grocery Guide, and that will kind of demonstrate how to grocery shop for balanced meals and how to intuitively build a balanced plate and measure portion sizes more intuitively. And then it also includes a lot of really fun meal ideas and snack ideas as well. All right, so what is intuitive eating? What it is not is it's not just another diet. A lot of people that hear intuitive eating, there's a lot of misconceptions around it, but a lot of people just think that it's just another diet, some more rules, but it's not. Actually, so I don't know if you can see me right now. This book is the Intuitive Eating book. It was established and created by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch all the way back in 1995, which is kind of funny. It's not that long ago, but it seems long ago. And both Evelyn and Elise are certified eating disorder registered dietitians. So came out in 1995. And what it is it's really just an approach to eating that's centered around interoceptive awareness and body attunement. So you might be wondering, okay, what is interoceptive awareness? And this is really just the ability to perceive physical sensations that arise from within the body. So these are things like when you need to use a bathroom, like you have a full bladder and you can feel that in your body, or your heart is racing. And then the three things that really apply to intuitive eating are satiety, so like satiation, hunger, and fullness. And then you might also be wondering what body attunement is, and it's simply just being aware and mindful of your body. So that's kind of essentially what the definition of intuitive eating is. And it also decentralizes weight. So it takes a lot of the quantitative numerical values out of an approach to eating. And like I was saying before, it really works to push back on diet culture. And intuitive eating can sound trivial, I know, to many people who have never struggled with disordered eating or haven't heard of it before. And there are many misconceptions about it. One misconception that's pretty common is that, okay, intuitive eating just sounds like something that's all about instinct and totally disregards wellness. So while that's really common, intuitive eating is actually more about embracing your biological cues, like I was discussing before with satisfaction, hunger, fullness cues, both your body and mind. So taking note of how your body feels and your mind, and just eating mindfully. And in listening to those cues and not neglecting them, you're actually working to live a more prosperous life. Another misconception is that it's like the eat whatever, whenever kind of diet. And that's not true. It actually encourages you not to restrict. So it preaches unconditional permission to eat, which, I'm like a psych nerd. So it supports Maslow's motivation theory, which essentially is like, you always want what you can't have. So I always think about it with like a toddler or a child. If you take a toy away from your toddler, they're probably going to do everything in their power that they can to get that toy back. Or if you ground your teenage daughter, she's probably going to do everything she can to like sneak out or get around that in some way. Same thing with food. When food is placed off limits, the brain naturally will think about it and start to crave it more. So in intuitive eating works to not just eat whatever you want, whenever you want. It works to take foods off of the pedestal that you're placing them on and start to eat them more normally. And that way you'll develop a decreased desire for them over time. And you really have to honor both your physical/biological hunger as well as your mental hunger or like cravings. And then the last misconception that I hear a lot is there's zero structure or science to back intuitive eating. And what I'm about to get into is that it actually follows, which they're in this book, the intuitive eating book, the 10 principles of intuitive eating are like the backbone of the approach. And, you can use them. They're not like, it's not like a step-by-step 10 principles. And I'll show you on the next slide. A lot of people, they're just for you to use as guidance in whatever order that you need and feels most natural. And there's also a lot of psychological science that supports intuitive eating, as well as evidence-based studies that have actually shown that it has had a lot of physical and biological successes, like those who identify as intuitive eaters have a lower triglycerides and emotional and disordered eating patterns compared to non-intuitive eaters. So essentially, intuitive eating demonstrates how to nourish your body without dieting. All right, so as I just mentioned, there are 10 principles of intuitive eating. They're all listed here. I'll run through them quickly. The first is reject the diet mentality. So this is you pushing back on all of that trendy messaging in the media that makes unrealistic promises that are actually more detrimental to your health than beneficial. So it's really understanding too that the global weight loss industry market, it's expected to reach at least $279 billion by the end of this year. That's $279 billion that the weight loss industry is expected to make by the end of this year. That's a lot of money. So this first principle is like, get mad about that. Like, get mad about the fact that the diet industry is literally profiting off of lies that have led you to believe that you are a failure every time a diet has stopped working for you. So that is number one. Number two is honor your hunger. So simply keeping your body biologically fed and rebuilding trust in yourself and around food. The third is make peace with food. So like I was explaining before, taking foods off of the pedestal that you place a lot of foods on, giving yourself unconditional permission to eat, and erasing guilt or fear around certain foods. Number four is challenge the food police. So this is pushing back on thoughts in your head or other people around you telling you that certain foods are good or bad. And really this good or bad messaging is what we like to call black and white or dichotomous thinking. It's putting two foods directly against each other. Like some foods a lot of people would think are bad, like cake or cookies, label them very black and white, bad food, versus good food, a lot of people recognize as or label as like fruits and vegetables. So erasing that messaging around food and being able to put on blinders when other people around you are trying to tell you what to eat. Number five is discover the satisfaction factor. So this is really tuning into pleasure and satisfaction during the mindful eating experience. Number six is feel your fullness. So this is observing your own body signals and signs. So checking in with yourself while you're eating and understanding and seeing kind of what your current fullness level is while you're eating so that you don't overeat or undereat. And something that is out there, there's like a hunger and fullness scale that a lot of intuitive eating registered dietitians use with their clients to check in during their meals. All right, and then number seven is cope with your emotions with kindness. And this is basically recognizing that restriction and restricting foods is what triggers emotional eating. So finding ways to comfort yourself or like nurture, kind of distract and resolve from those triggers. And so what a lot of the intuitive eating dietitians do is they have their clients journal when they start to feel some type of way around certain foods. So if they feel anxious around eating bread or pasta, write it down to find patterns in their thinking so that they can eventually expose them back to that food in a gentle way so that they erase that fear around the food. And then this one, number seven, coping with your emotions with kindness, another fun activity and useful activity that a lot of intuitive eating dietitians use is using I think they call it a toolbox of, I'm not sure exactly, it's like an activities toolbox. So engaging in beneficial activities when you start to feel some sort of way about a certain kind of food, rather than turning to the food to cope with the underlying emotions. Number eight is respect your body. So, understanding that your genetic blueprint and set point weight theory have a lot to do with the number on the scale that appears when you step on it. Understanding that you're unique and it's unfair to compare yourself to others when no one is the same. Number nine is movement. And a lot of what Elise Tribole and Elise Resch, the founders of intuitive eating, talk about in their book is a term called joyful movement. And I love this term. It's basically trying to foster a better relationship with exercise. So finding your source of joyful movement means finding the type of movement that you genuinely will look forward to every day and not leave feeling defeated or feeling negatively about yourself, finding the kind of movement that works for you and that makes you feel the best. And then the last principle of intuitive eating is honoring your health with gentle nutrition. And this is just making food choices that honor your health and your taste buds while making you feel good. So knowing that you don't have to eat perfectly to be healthy, which we're talking about today, you know, having and eating a balanced diet over time is really what matters, and progress over perfection is what counts. All right, so if you haven't already, go ahead and download my free Intuitive Eater's Grocery Guide so that you can follow along and be more interactive during the last part of this presentation. I did put the QR code on this slide for people that are using a desktop. I'm not sure if you can use it while you're watching on your phone, but if you need to, you can hover over it with your camera and click the link there. And I'll give everyone a minute to get theirs. If you did print it out, I have my printed version here because we're kind of going to flip through it together. So go ahead and pull that up where you can just listen. Okay, so this resource is for you to keep after this webinar. So, and it's for you to use if you would like day to day or every Sunday when you're, going grocery shopping. This is for you to use. So as I explained earlier, the idea behind this guide is to keep wellness and nutrition simple. So as simple as possible, so you aren't dreading going to the grocery store or spending your time precisely planning all of your meals. So if you flip into the guide, chapter 1 is a reflective journal prompt warm-up. And this is just to get you to start thinking about what foods you really like versus dislike. I don't know if you don't have it in front of you, I have it with me right now. So if you can see me, I'll kind of run through it. But it's just like a quick little exercise getting you to think about what are your favorite foods, what foods don't you like, what are your comfort foods, what's a new food that you'd like to try this week, what foods keep you fullest for longest, what foods make you feel the best, what foods will serve you best for your week based on what your schedule is and what you have going on. And this exercise really just helps to practice the idea of interoceptive awareness that I mentioned earlier. And it helps you to brainstorm the most realistic, enjoyable, and nourishing meal outline possible for your week ahead. So in doing this exercise, you are practicing the principles of intuitive eating. So you're pushing back on diet culture, understanding what foods will honor your hunger, your physical needs, and satiety, and adopting a more balanced mindset with food. Knowing that you never, I put this in a little note at the end of this chapter, but knowing that you never have to start over on a Monday. I have some chat messages coming up. Okay, I think it looks like, for those that could not access the guide, it looks like someone linked it in the chat. Thank you for doing that. All right. So that's just a little warm up. And then the second part of the guide is the actual grocery list guide. And this is just for constructing your grocery list in an intuitive way. And I have kind of sectioned out this page. If you're looking in chapter 2 of the guide, I've sectioned it out so that there's room for a colors category. So this is like the fruits and vegetables category. I love to think of fruits and vegetables as eating the rainbow. So how many colors can you eat on a daily basis? And really the key is for a balanced diet is variety, and variety helps to foster a healthy gut microbiome and a stronger immune system. So that's a great benefit of eating more colors, as well as the fact that fruits and vegetables are packed with antioxidants, fiber for digestion and fullness, as well as a lot of different kinds of vitamins and minerals. There's another category for whole grains. So that's next to the colors one. There's fiber for digestion and whole grains, fullness, and regulation of blood sugar, as well as, again, vitamins and minerals. There's a proteins section. So protein is great for muscle recovery and development, and it also keeps you very full. There's a dairy section. So this is a great way to get in a lot of calcium, vitamin D, potassium. It's great for hormone health, dairy, as well as for energy storage and satiation. And then, of course, there's some spots for salty snacks, sweet snacks, and must-haves. So I love the must-haves section. This is like staple or comfort food items that you just have to have for the week, knowing that no foods are off limits. And there's a spot for the new food of the week. So I always like to try as many different kinds of food as possible. So it's fun to kind of like try a new type of food every week to increase variety in your diet. And on the back of that page, there are some, it's the same thing, but there's just a lot of ideas for you if you're stuck or like want to try a new food and you can't think of any. There's a whole bunch on the back. And I really challenge you, like if you do sit down and use this guide, after you make your personalized list with this template, ask yourself, is this list reflective of my responses to the journal prompt in the last chapter? You know, I don't want you to put stuff on your list that you wouldn't eat or that you would dread eating. We're trying to foster a positive eating experience to create a better relationship with food. All right. Looks like the pictures did not show up on this page, which is weird. Well, I can show you, I will show you if you can see me. I have my guide up, and if you download the guide, you'll see it as well. I want to also show you how to build a plate intuitively. So, you know, this is without having to measure your food or using a food scale or measuring cups. Think about it this way. Do you really want to be, you know, 80 years old weighing out every little thing that you eat? Probably not. So these are great tools to help you eat mindfully. Yeah, I'm sorry about the visuals on this slide, but they are in the guide if you download it. And if you look, I'm holding mine up. The first thing on here is a My Plate visual. So you'll see here that half of this plate is filled up with fruits and vegetables. So this is like the colors aspect that I was touching on before. There's protein and plenty of whole grains. And you can sprinkle in some dairy here and there. Maybe you want some yogurt or milk on the side, or there's some cheese sprinkled in, maybe nuts, kind of whatever you like. So this is a great, colorful reminder of how you can build a plate intuitively without having to precisely measure out everything that you're eating. And then this visual, not sure if you can see it on my slide here that I'm talking on, but it's a great visual of your hand and how you can use your hand to intuitively think about portion sizes. So the first one is the palm of your hand. If you look at it, roughly the palm of your hand is equivalent to 3 ounces of protein. So that's kind of a fun rule of thumb to consider. Next to it, if you make a fist, roughly a fist is about 1 cup. If you cup your palm, about whatever fits in your palm is about 1/2 of a cup. And then lastly, your thumb, like a thumb's amount of like peanut butter or whatever, is roughly about a tablespoon. So those are great, you know, you always have your hand with you. So those are great rules of thumb to keep in mind. And then that is how to build an intuitive plate. And then as you keep moving through the guide, I'm not going to go over all of them, but there are the remainder of the guide. They're just meal and snack recipes that are nourishing. I've included breakfast ideas. So there's like overnight oats. There's also a smoothie idea, and then a lot of lunch and dinner recipes as well. And the last slide, or the last page, it's kind of a mix and match snack page. So it's it's like a template to help you construct more balanced snacks with solid sources of carbs, proteins, and fats. So I have some examples are like vegetables and hummus, crackers and cheese, dark chocolate, berries, and almonds. So that's on one of the final pages of this guide. All right, so that brings us to the end of my presentation. And if you would like to join my community on Instagram, my handle is on this slide at expedition.nutrition. And my Instagram has a bunch of information about my personal story. I post on it a lot, and a lot of information's on there about my practice and new program, Food Freedom Reroute. And yeah, this is how to get in touch with me.